Alright, quick question. Does learning Japanese feel like something you should be doing, but never quite want to do? If it feels like homework, like another obligation on top of work and life, then something is fundamentally broken. And it's not you. Most of us are still running this school-style approach, like grinding through textbooks, building perfect study streaks, waiting to be ready before we actually use Japanese. But turns out doing everything right is exactly what holds most people back. If you're an adult learning outside of school, that approach just doesn't work. We don't have the time, energy, or patience for it. And I know because I lived exactly that. Like my first attempt at learning Japanese was the student way, and I quit completely. And I think it was not because I was lazy or anything, but because that mindset was just never built for my life outside of school. So in this video, I'll show you 3 patterns of student mindset that might be sabotaging your Japanese right now and what to do instead so learning again feels lighter, more sustainable, and actually enjoyable so that you can actually make progress. So let me ask you something. When you sit down to study Japanese, do you pick the method that feels enjoyable or the method that feels proper? Most people pick proper. You know, textbooks like grammar drills, vocabulary lists, things that feel like real studying, things that look like what a serious student would do. And then they wonder why they can't stay consistent. And this is what school taught us, right? If it feels fun, you're not learning. Like watching anime, that's entertainment. Playing games, procrastination. Real progress requires suffering. And we carry that belief into Japanese as adults. So we pick methods that feel serious, even if we hate them. You know, like forcing yourself through boring textbooks or grinding through Anki decks that actually drain us. But here's what I realized. If we don't enjoy it, we're just not gonna sustain it. And this isn't a character flaw or anything, it's just how humans work, right? Like we have limited willpower. Our energy is already drained by work and life. And Japanese, we're doing that voluntarily, like in our spare time with no external pressure, like no grades, no deadlines, and nobody checking if we ever showed up. And under those conditions, anything that feels like a chore is eventually gonna get dropped. You literally can't willpower your way through years of something you hate. And when you quit, which you will, you'll blame yourself for not being disciplined enough. But it was never about discipline, it was about the approach. Enjoyment isn't a bonus, it's not a reward for after you've done the real work. Enjoyment is the actual strategy. Like it literally is the thing that makes long-term consistency even possible in the first place. Okay, so what does this actually look like? Just choose methods you'll actually stick with. And be honest with yourself. What do you actually hate doing? Maybe it's Anki, maybe it's textbooks, maybe it's writing practice. Like whatever it is, just stop. I know that sounds wrong, but stay with me. There's no method so effective that it's worth doing if you're gonna quit in like 3 weeks. Like an optimal method you abandon loses to a suboptimal method you stick with for years every single time. And now ask yourself, what would you actually look forward to? Like, what is the version of Japanese that wouldn't feel like a chore? Maybe you already know. There's probably something you've dismissed as not real studying that you'd actually enjoy. And if you're not sure, just experiment. Like try Japanese podcasts while commuting, or try manga if you like, or try switching your video game language to Japanese. Just try to see what doesn't feel like work, and that's your signal. And I'll be honest, when I switched to learning through podcasts and anime, I felt guilty for weeks, literally weeks. I felt like I was cheating or something, but my Japanese improved more in those first 3 months than the previous year of proper study. Now to be clear, there is a place for structured learning, right? So textbooks can be valuable tools, especially early on when you need foundational grammar and vocabulary. Use them if they help, just don't use only them, and don't stick with them if you hate them. The point isn't structure is bad. The point is don't force yourself into methods you actually hate just because they feel proper. And by the way, I put together a free checklist to help you figure out exactly what's making your Japanese learning feel like work instead of fun. So this may help you make small changes to your learning approach to make it feel lighter and more enjoyable again. It's completely free and I'll put the link in the description. The people who actually reach fluency are not the ones with the most disciplined study routines. They're actually the ones who found a way to enjoy the process enough to keep going when everyone else quits. So enjoyment isn't the opposite of effectiveness. Enjoyment is effectiveness, because it's literally the only thing that lasts. So most people treat Japanese like a class. They carve out this Japanese time, maybe like an hour in the evening or maybe weekend mornings. Textbook open, study happens, close the book, and back to normal life. And I know that seems reasonable, right? But here's the problem. The moment that time disappears, which it will, Japanese disappears with it. And I learned this during heavy work travel. I'd be sitting in hotel rooms like at 10 p.m. after draining days, staring at my textbook, trying to force myself through exercises. And most nights, I'd just stare at the page, like reading the same sentence 3 times, but not really absorbing anything. I'd close the book, tell myself I'll catch up tomorrow, and 3 weeks of that, and I was ready to quit Japanese altogether. And that's when I understood what was actually wrong. Like, Japanese only existed inside this box that I had created. And that box required conditions I couldn't control. The student approach creates this boundary, right? Like Japanese time versus regular life. And look, it worked in school because school gave us the time. Like, classes were scheduled, structure was somehow there. But as adults, we have to create and protect that boundary ourselves. And life is just too unpredictable for that. So stop actually trying to protect the boundary, just dissolve it. Like, Japanese shouldn't be the separate activity that we try to make time for. It should be part of the actual things we're already doing. And what's interesting, this just isn't more sustainable. Over time, it's actually how we learn faster. Not because it's more efficient per hour, but because you're getting way more hours without even realizing it. Just think about how people actually become really proficient at the language. Through spending time with it, right? And here's what I realized. You don't need to move to Japan to create that immersion. You just need to stop treating Japanese as this separate thing from the rest of your day. It's more about trying to surround yourself with the language constantly and just finding ways how to engage with it more. And that's what makes it stick and creates that language intuition. When we dissolve that boundary, we're not sacrificing effectiveness. We're literally creating the conditions for real immersion, even if we never move to Japan. So here's how you do it. Stop thinking of Japanese as something that needs its own dedicated time slot. Instead, just look at your day and ask, where can I attach Japanese? Like, you're already commuting, right? So that's Japanese time. Just listen to a podcast. Even if you don't understand everything, because you can't really focus 100% on it, like, your brain is still processing the sounds, the rhythm, and the patterns. So when I drive to work, it's like 30 minutes in the car each way, like back and forth. And that's 5 days a week. So that's like 5 hours of Japanese exposure every single week. And I'm not even adding like any extra studying time. It's just automatically there because I commute anyway. And that's throughout a year, 250 hours of free immersion time. You're probably already scrolling your phone when you have downtime anyway, so just scroll Japanese Twitter instead, or follow accounts that post in Japanese. You're gonna scroll anyway, so might as well let Japanese slip into that. And you're already thinking in your head all day, so just start narrating in Japanese, like, I'm making coffee. コーヒーを作っています. I'm checking email. メールをチェックしてます. Just very basic stuff. Like, your internal monologue is happening anyway, so might as well just make a Japanese practice. If you're just starting out, this might look a bit different. Just start with graded content made for learners. Beginner podcasts like Nihongo Konteppe for beginners, or apps like HelloTalk, where you can just read simple posts. The point isn't necessarily to understand everything. The point is exposure. And even if you only catch like 20 to 30% at first, that's quite okay. But the principle is the same. You attach, don't add. Because once you attach, Japanese isn't competing with your life anymore. It's just riding along like inside of it. Now, I'm not saying never use textbooks or do focused study sessions. If you have the time and you actually enjoy it, that's great. You make faster progress. But don't make that your only way of engaging with Japanese. Because the moment life gets busy, those dedicated study sessions are the first thing to go. Alright, final pattern. So when I first started learning Japanese, I tried to do everything right. I finished Genki 1 and Genki 2, which are very popular Japanese textbooks. literally from cover to cover, like doing every chapter, every exercise. I had an Anki streak going of month of daily reviews, and all the vocabulary from both books were in there. And when Anki showed me a card, I was able to actually recall it quite easily. I was putting in the hours and I felt like I was making progress. And then I booked my first online one-on-one conversation practice lesson, and I could not do anything, quite literally. Like, I barely understood what the teacher was actually saying, and I could barely just string a very simple sentence together. And all those vocabulary words that I had learned and knew in Anki, I just couldn't access them in real life. And I'd spent months on those textbooks, like months building that streak, and in real conversations, almost none of it showed up. And at some point, I actually thought something was wrong with me, but I eventually realized it wasn't me. The problem was that I'd been creating a false sense of progress the whole time. Because what I did, I actually tracked the number of chapters that I completed, and I tracked Anki streaks. So basically I measured input, like how much effort I put into it. But I never once checked for output, like can I actually do something with this in real life? And this is what school trained us to do, right? Like in school, effort equaled grades. So you'd shut up, do the work, and pass the test. The grade told you that you learned, even though you forgot everything a week later. So we learned to measure effort. And we just carried that into our Japanese learning as adults without actually realizing it. But here's the problem. In school, that actually worked because tests forced output at some point. And as adults, there's no test. Like, we can grind through textbooks and feel like we're making progress and never actually develop the ability to use the language. And without seeing real improvement in what we can do, motivation just dies. Like, we're doing everything right, but nothing feels like it's actually working. So what do? We shift from measuring input to measuring output. So rather than asking, did I study today? We can ask ourselves, can I do something I couldn't do before? And here's what this looks like. First, define what I call ability checkpoints, like specific things you want to be able to do. Follow a YouTube video without subtitles, or read a manga page without a dictionary, or have a 5-minute conversation about your day, like whatever matters to you. So these things become your real progress markers, right? Like, not chapters finished, it's not streaks maintained, but can you do the thing or not? And number 2, regularly attempt these things, like not as formal tests or anything, but just as check-ins. Like, try to watch that YouTube video or try to have that conversation and just see what happens. And here's the thing, you will fail a lot. And that's literally the point. So the first time I tried one of these checkpoints, which was for me explaining my job in Japanese, I failed just miserably. Like, I couldn't get through 2 sentences. But that failure told me more about my Japanese level than 6 months of, reviewing cards in Anki ever did. If I had tried a conversation after Genki 1 instead of waiting until after Genki 2, of course, I would have still failed then too. But I would have learned sooner. I can recognize vocabulary on a flashcard, but I can't really access it in real life. And that's a completely different skill, and I could have started training towards that earlier. So mistakes aren't signs that you're bad at Japanese, they're information. They basically show you exactly where the gap is between what you've studied and what you can actually do with it. So stop asking, did I finish? Start asking, can I actually do it? So if you take just one thing out of this video, stop being a student, start being a user. So if this one was helpful, you may want to watch this one up here next, where I talk about how to actually become more consistent at learning Japanese. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye.